I think there are many times in our lives where we become good at one particular thing, and because we're good at that one thing, we feel like we are good at everything else. And it's not to say that you can't be good at other things if you excel at one thing, but I think what can be a problem is if you feel like you know everything in one field, you think you know everything in another field that you're actually not that familiar with. And so, something to take in mind is to always approach things, especially things that are very new to you, with a beginner's mindset. So, if you're starting something very new and you have no knowledge of it, I think it's important to approach it with a lot of humility and let go of that pride. Put your pride at the door and just know that this is something that you don't know and you need help in order for you to improve on it. There are people better than you at this new craft that you are investing in, and it's okay to not know things and to just learn from those that do know more than you. And I think one great illustration, at least from my personal example, is my experience getting into martial arts, specifically into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And it's a great illustration because when you start off, now there's five main belt colors for the progression of your improvement, your skill level in this martial art, right? So you have white belt, which is what you start off with, and then you go into blue and purple, brown, and then black. And within each belt, there is stripes on your belt to indicate specific progression on that belt level. So usually you'll get four stripes before getting promoted to the next belt color. Now, the promotion for the next belt color always varies depending on what school you go to and what your professor or your sensei, your coach, your instructor, it really depends on his scale or systems of how he promotes people because every instructor would be different. But basically, the point I'm trying to make is when I got started in jiu-jitsu, now I only trained for 2 years in the gi, which is the attire that you wear, which is like kind of like a karate attire that you wear with the belt around your waist. I did it for 2 years, and the white belt is always a reminder that you're a newbie, right? You're an amateur. You're not the best. You're not a black belt, right? You're not a pro. You're an amateur that's just starting off, right? And it's a good reminder to always have that visual look at your belt to know that, hey, you're just a white belt. There are people that have higher belts than you that know more than you. So I think it's good to have that reminder because it's humbling. It's to let yourself know that you don't know everything, that you know very little, and there is so much room for improvement and so much of a learning curve for you when you're in that position, right? And it's not to say that when you do get to a higher belt that you can't continue to learn more, right? But you start off at a very humble, low place, understanding that you are not all that. And the great thing is as you improve on your jiu-jitsu skill level, you are probably getting beat up constantly by people that are better than you. But the great thing is as you continue to get better, you probably get beat up less and less, and eventually you can be the one that does the beating and has the advantage over other people because you have gotten significantly better. And I think it's a great illustration because I think whenever you approach a new craft or there's something new that you're investing in, you gotta see yourself as that white belt, right? That you don't know everything. Sure, you may have great knowledge. Like I might have had a lot of experience with basketball and have a knowledge with it, right? And pretty skilled. But that doesn't mean that the skills necessarily translate into something like jiu-jitsu or something like playing the guitar, right? Maybe your drive and your discipline and your consistency in practicing, that may translate like good habits that you've built up through basketball. But in terms of like technical knowledge and acquiring the skill, in that sense, you are a beginner, right? And so when you approach these things, it's important to approach it with a lot of humility and understand that there's some things that you don't know, and in these other fields that you invest in, there are other people that have spent maybe a lifetime committing to it, and they know so much more. And with that humble state of mind, you could definitely ask people for help and make them part of your progression in getting better, right? If you approach these things like you know it all, then you're going to struggle to get better because you're going to think like everything you're doing is so good when in reality it's probably not. So you're probably hurting yourself acting like you know everything when you really don't. And that is hurting your progression to get better because you think you are doing so well when in reality you're probably doing bad and not improving at all, or you're stifling your growth, right? And so I think it's just important in life just to be humble, and even when you talk about topics that you know a lot about, there may be some topics that you know barely, you know very little about, right? So it's okay to let other people share what they know more on a specific topic, and let them share and just ask questions and just be humble. And I think that's the important part too, is just asking questions. Always being curious and asking questions in a way where it's coming from a humble place and you just really have a desire to learn. So I think whatever in life, if you really want to grow and gain your skill level, you have to approach it with humility and understand that, hey, you don't know everything, but you're taking steps and progressions. There's people along the way that will help you, and it's okay to ask. It won't hurt your pride, right? But it'll keep you humble and keep you on your toes to make sure that you're continually improving. And so even living here in Japan, that's been the case in terms of learning Japanese. I couldn't come to Japan and act like I know all the Japanese with the very little Japanese that I practiced months prior. And I realized like I learned so much more, like my growth was so rapid because I was so immersed in the culture, immersed in Japan where everybody else speaks Japanese. So I thought I was progressing well back home in America, when in reality, I wasn't progressing that much compared to actually living in Japan and speaking Japanese every single day and kind of being forced in that environment. So, in that sense and in that progression, I'm very humbled by the interactions and my conversations because I've messed up many times, and I've always asked for help, and I never acted like, oh, I know this more, or no, this is the way to say certain things, when in reality I just kept the open mind and just willing to take in all the help and information that came my way. So I think, the moral of the lesson is just to have that beginner's mindset, always be humble, always be willing to ask questions, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. And I think when you do invest in these new crafts, you'll continue to get better and better and improve, and you'll see growth in yourself.